Hey guys, this is Andy here. Today I'll be showing you guys how to put a picture on a piece of wood.
For today's project, we're going to be using two different softwares, and that'll be Inkscape and Carbide Create. If you want to follow along with this project, feel free to find the download links in the description. Let's start off by talking about the best type of image to use for a project like this. I have two different things that I look for when searching for a picture. The first thing is that I want something that's black or white or made up of solid colors. And typically, something like simple logos or images such as line drawings or clip art work really well. Here are a couple examples. And you can see that all of these images have either basic designs, or they're made up of solid colors, or they're just black and white. And this is pretty important because when you're seeing something, you're only going to be able to see the difference in contrast from the top part of the surface part of your wood and the wood from the underside, or any material that you're using. What you want to be looking for is an image that has a high resolution. This is especially important for text, because pictures that are of low resolution, a lot of times the text ends up turning out a little bit wonky or a little bit rounded. And having a high resolution image helps make sure that the text turns out crisp and the rest of your image turns out crisp as well when you cut it out on your machine. Alright guys, let's go and find a photo to carve into a piece of wood. For today, I'm going to find a picture of Surprise Pikachu in black and white. Black and white. And we'll look at some. I think this one looks pretty good. Download this. Actually, I have it downloaded already here. And we'll go into Inkscape and we'll open this file, or we'll import this file. And you can see there's our Surprise Pikachu. So what we need to do from this is that when you look at the picture here, you'll see that the picture is actually made up of a bunch of pixels or blocks of color that make up the image. So when you look at it from far away, you can't really see the pixels. But when you look at it close up, you can see that it's made up of little tiny squares. For cutting something like this on a Sienci machine, you can't really cut pixels per se. So we'll have to turn this into kind of like a vector, or smooth lines that the machine is able to follow. And although that sounds a little bit complicated, it's actually a pretty easy process. What we'll do is we'll select on the photo, and then we'll go into Path, click Trace Bitmap, and this tool is going to help us basically turn these pixels or these lines into smooth curves, just the same as if you were to sketch or draw over or trace over the picture that we have here. One thing I like to turn on is live preview. It gives you an idea of what your trace is going to look like. And you can see that there's some gaps in between the lines of the Pikachu. So I'll just keep moving, scaling this up until they're pretty much filled. So it looks like it's pretty much good. This is not a very accurate, like the perfect representation of what you're going to get. You can play around with the threshold here, and this is going to change. This number is going to change depending on whether or not you're using a black or white image, or if you're using a colored image, or if you're using a picture of sorts. You can play around with this to get the best result. But in any case, I know that 0.65 should work pretty well. So I'll press OK, and you can see it generated the vector, and I can drag this away. So one of these is going to be the vector, and one of these is the pixel image. And I think the top one is the pixel image. I'm going to delete that. That leaves us with the vector. And if you double click this, you can actually see the points that make up the edges or the ends of each line. You can actually drag the vector to make little changes to the picture if you want to. So there you go. So that's how we make the vector image. I'll just save that. And I actually already have this saved already. So you'll just save this, and it'll be an SVG, which is a file format that we need to use for Carbide Create in the next step. So now that we've created Pikachu, we'll start making the Gcode for it. So the first thing we can do is import our design, which is right here, our SVG file. And you can see there's our Pikachu. I'll move it over and then press done. And one thing that I like to do to just get an idea of how I'm going to lay everything out is to create a rectangle. You can create a rectangle using this tool here. Click on that and drag and drop the rectangle. And I can also pick the size of the rectangle, which I've measured earlier, of the piece of wood that I'm using. So the dimensions for that are 197 by 179. Press OK. And I'm also going to move the bottom left corner of the rectangle to the origin point, which is here. So this red and white circle looking thing, that's where our machine is going to start off. So by using this rectangle, we can get an idea of where that's going to end up being. So now I want to move over the Pikachu. Now that this line is in the way, I'm just going to move this over, and then I'll move Pikachu over, and then I'll move the rectangle over, and then I'll put the Pikachu inside here. There you go. And I can scale this if I want to by using the scale factor, or I can drag it to the size that I want. So I'll scale it up like that. I'll move it down here. And I'm going to add some text just for fun using the text tool. And what it's going to say is, when you see a CNC, and then I'm going to make another line for the first time. There you go. So you can make text like this. It's pretty easy to do. And you can change the size of the text with these parameters. So there you have it. There's our design. The next thing we're going to do is go over to toolpath, and we're going to do something called a V-carving for the sign. And that's a good way to make signs like this, because a V-carving is able to get sharp corners like on the edges of the letters and things like that. So we'll select all of the parts that we want to cut out with the V-carving, and we'll press V-carve, and we want to choose our tool. There's a bunch of tools built into Carbide Create, but I am using a tool that I've created already into the program to match with the one that I'm actually going to be using. And you can fill in these different parameters based on the tool that you're using. So I have a 1-inch diameter, half-inch diameter, 1-inch length, 30 degree per side, or 60 degree V-bit. These numbers don't matter too much, but the angle definitely does matter. So you can fill this in based on the V-bit that you are using. The other thing you want to do is change the set speeds automatically part. So I click on that, and that lets me change these numbers here. So yeah, I find that for V carving, you want to make sure that your step over and depth per pass isn't too high. This is sort of a trial and error thing that I found, but I would say for most projects, if you follow along with the settings that I use, you should be okay. So for step over, I'm going to use 5, and depth per pass, I will also use 5 millimeters. So that just means that the V-bit's not going to go more than 5 millimeters down into the material, and the width of each pass of the cut will also be a maximum of 5 millimeters. The other things we can change are the feed rate. I'm going to change it to about 1200. Oops, 1200. And our plunge rate, I'll change that to 500. And these are some general settings you can use for your V-carving project, and depending on the type of project or type of material you're using, you can adjust these settings as you feel. And I'll press OK. And I'll press OK again. And that leaves us with the V-carving. And you can see with the blue lines, you can kind of get an idea of where the V-bit is going to go. And you can see at the sharp corners of the edges, you're going to see that the tip of the V-bit is just going to be grazing against the corners of the letters here. And you can see that it follows the middle to carve out the two sides of the letter. You also get a time estimate of the cut time as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll save the Gcode. I actually already have this project saved as a Gcode, so I won't save it again, but you would want to save the Gcode for yourself. So that's the next step, and we're going to go on to actually carving this Pikachu out now. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some hot glue on this piece of wood and get it mounted to the board. I'm going to switch out the V-bit to the one that I was using earlier. And then I'll set the tip of the V-bit at the origin point, which is going to be our bottom left corner. Last but not least, we'll load the Gcode into Universal Gcode platform. And don't forget to press reset 0 right after you do this.